Hey guys, hope you're having a good day today and welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about 10 amazing single player games that you can play right now. Now these games won't be in any specific order, it's more just a collective of great games that you can check out and play. Although I can't cover every single game I would love to talk about in this video, I do plan on making more of these in the future covering more amazing games. So if your game didn't make the list this time around, it might make it in future videos. So with that out of the way let's begin. Starting us off at the top of this list is Detroit Become Human, made by Quantic Dream, the developers behind Heavy Rain and Beyond Two Souls. Although these types of games won't be for everybody and I completely understand why, but for the players who do enjoy these story driven and narrative focused experiences, you're going to have a great time with this one. The story follows three characters who all have their own paths and questions they seek answers for, and as the story unravels you will be able to make a number of choices along the way with these three characters that will shape and mould how the story ultimately plays out in the end. The premise for the game is the idea of how we view artificial intelligence and the concept of AI developing sentient thinking and how we view this concept as a whole. If this all sounds like an interesting concept to you, then definitely check this one out. Now the next game on our list that I'm going to be talking about is Catherine. Now the reason why I wanted to mention this game is that I feel it's really unique in the fact that it's a puzzle game at its core, but it also tests the player's morality when it comes to relationships, as you will be tested with a series of questions and situations in which you will decide how the story unfolds for the main character. With fun and quirky characters and a really cool way of delivering the story as you progress through the stages of the game, with the integration of the mobile phone replying to messages that will shape the narrative, as well as crazy looking bosses and interactions within the game, I feel the experience in Catherine is pretty standalone in that I haven't really seen this mixture of puzzle mechanics crossed with moral choices done in such a fun and interesting fashion. If this seems like the kind of game that would pique your interest, then please check this game out as it is really awesome. Moving on with the list, we now have Persona 5. Persona 5 is an excellent JRPG set in the modern day Tokyo in locations such as Shinjuku and Shibuya. You follow the main protagonist through his day-to-day life as the days and months are displayed in the game. Now there is a lot to like here, from the character development, the combat system, the amazing art style of the game, and of course the music. The music in Persona overall has always been that of high quality and always manages to bring the hype when it's needed, having a plethora of depth with how you want to manage your team, what paths you want everyone to take in terms of combat choices. In my opinion, this is still one of the best JRPGs you can play. Usually it's worth checking the PlayStation Store as well because there's normally a sale for Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal going at a discount, so it's definitely worth checking out now and again. I'm sure a lot of people knew this game was making the list, and that is the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Having only finished the original Final Fantasy VII once when I was much younger, I couldn't really remember much about the original version. But as I was playing through the remake, I would start to recall certain events and scenes from the original game as I was playing through. Even if you haven't ever played another Final Fantasy game before, I do feel this is a great game to get you into the series and get a feel for the world and the characters around you. Whether you decide to play Final Fantasy VII on the PS4 or the PS5, you're going to have a great time regardless. Although obviously it does run smoother on the PlayStation 5, being that it's 60 FPS instead of a locked 30 on the base PlayStation 4 on PS4 Pro. The game still remains amazing, and the story in Final Fantasy is excellent, and the character development, much like Persona, is engaging and fun, not to mention that the voice actors they chose to play these characters are solid in my opinion. I feel if you have never touched a Final Fantasy game before, then this is a great place to start. Coming in next on the list with Crash Bandicoot 4, It's About Time. I have talked about this game in past videos, but I still love giving this game a shout out whenever I get the opportunity to. Crash Bandicoot 4, developed by Toys for Bob, did an incredibly great job here, and it still pains me that this game overall had little sales numbers compared to a lot of other games released in 2020. And I could only put this down to the fact that platformers over the years have become much more niche in the face of the popularity and rise of open world games and battle royales that have swamped us in the past few years. Nevertheless though, Crash 4 remains to be an excellent game and a great example of what a good developer can do with the right level of dedication and focus behind the wheel. I highly recommend Crash 4 to anyone that has a love for platforming overall. Now I might be cheating here a little by putting two games in one spot, but I feel both the SpiderMan games deserve a mention here, and not just one or the other, because they are both excellent games. They both 100% nail the mechanics of web slinging around the city. Whether you want to get from A to B as fast as you can, or you want to be as stylish as possible, this game lets you flex your inner Spider-Man. Coupled together with great villains from the Spider-Man universe and an amazing combat system to boot, With Peter and Miles having a different feel to each other in combat and in personality, there is plenty to do in this city. And of course, you're always going to want to go to the highest point of the map and jump off from it, because this is pretty much an unwritten rule of the Spider-Man games by now. I always feel that Insomniac have come through time and time again making amazing games. And these two Spider-Man games are no different, so if you haven't played these games, please, I highly recommend that you check these out. And since we're on the topic of Insomniac games, the next one I'm going to be talking about is Ratchet & Clank: A Rift Apart. Ratchet & Clank has always been a much loved franchise of mine ever since the original game launched back on the PlayStation 2 in 2002. I ended up finishing most of the Ratchet & Clank games and enjoyed all of them. Although if I have one regret, it's that I never got round to finishing Ratchet & Clank Gladiator, which I really want to go back to at some point and finish. With A Rift Apart being the first next-gen Ratchet & Clank game to hit the PS5, Insomniac outdid themselves here in just how beautiful this game looks and plays, and they definitely stayed with a tried and tested formula that's always worked for them, while adding in some new fun mechanics that complement the game's look and feel, with likeable characters, a fun world to explore, but mostly just a great game to play. If you do decide to pick this game up, I do encourage you to play some of the older ones first, just to get a feel on who these characters are, because it will help you follow the story in Rift Apart. If you're someone that loves a good platformer game with a healthy dose of action, then this is definitely the one for you. And speaking of action, let's cover Devil May Cry 5. The fifth installment of the DMC series following Nero and Dante, 5 years after the events of DMC 4, with the addition of a third character called V. So in terms of character playability, you won't be getting bored switching between these three characters, as they all offer unique combat styles. I would argue that this is probably the best Devil May Cry game in terms of sheer gameplay alone, giving a feeling that this was more of an expansion of the DMC free combat rather than any of the other games. And in my opinion, that is definitely the best way to go. If you're looking for a great action game where you can just feel like a complete badass killing everything in front of you, then this is definitely the game for you. Please check this one out if you're even remotely interested in Devil May Cry. And of course, what would an amazing games list be without The Last of Us? Although I feel this game doesn't really need an introduction at this point, I'm sure most of you have played The Last of Us, but I still wanted to put it on the list, since it really was such a monumental game back when it was released on the PlayStation 3 in 2013. Although this game didn't redefine anything mechanically or in its gameplay, what this game did, where a lot of other games had failed at the time, was deliver a completely immersive story and world with some of the best voice acting that had been currently used for a video game, crossing the realm into TV shows and movies. The Last of Us was very good at engrossing you into a scene of what was happening around you, whether that was a heartfelt moment between Joel and Ellie or something devastating like a character death. The Last of Us still remains one of my favourite games to this day, and it will always be one that I recommend to players looking for an amazing game to play. I envy anyone who has yet to play this game, because I would love to experience this all over again for the first time. Now we have reached the last game on the list, and I feel this video couldn't have left out God of War. Honestly, I don't use the word masterpiece all that often, but this is one game where I would 100% use this term. Now where to even start with this game, with its great story to its characters, down to the amazing redefined combat with the Leviathan axe, having a number of ways to kill the enemies with many upgrades that you receive through the game, and guiding Kratos and Atreus to their goal up the mountain. Meeting a lot of great characters along the way, as well as an excellent villain who you will encounter a few times through the story, with an ending that sets up what we now know will be God of War Ragnarok, and I'm sure Santa Monica Studio will deliver us another amazing game in the series that will either be just as good or surpass this game. If you have not yet played this game, this is definitely a must play in my opinion. So what did you guys think of the list? Did you think all these games deserved a spot in this video? Have you got any games that you would love to recommend to me so I can put them in another video in the future? If so, please feel free to leave me a comment on them, and hopefully your game will make it into the next video. And if you did enjoy the content, please feel free to subscribe, as I really would appreciate that. Give the video a like too, as it helps with the algorithm and push my video to more people so they can discover them. And if you want to interact with me, feel free to join the Discord channel too, as I would love to expand this with more fresh faces to interact with. The link is in the description for the Discord channel. And with all that being said, have a good one guys, and I'll see you on the next one.